scumbags and scallywags, put your hooks and paws together for the meanest spectacle of your lives.
Our beloved Jinx. The Jinx video, it's taking a lot longer to get done just because there's so much to talk about when it comes to Jinx. Instead of making you guys wait for another few weeks while I finish editing it all, I decided that I'll release the first third of the video just as a little teaser. For those who've been waiting up for this video, I'm really sorry for how long it's taken just to get at least this teaser out. And for those who are new on the channel, welcome. I hope that while I'm getting this analysis done, you can enjoy the previous 3 that I did on the Pilty trio. I hope you enjoy an introduction to the Jinx analysis. Salam world! I'm a shorter than average girl from down under, and we're getting into our second love triangle from Arcane, starting off with my girly
Jinx! Finally got the name right.
Jinx is one, if not the most lovable character in the entire show. She's smart, charismatic, artistic, funny, and an overall joy just to watch on screen. Which begs the question, why do we love a murderer? And how can we? Jinx's character really tests our humanity and the ideals that we as a species have developed as a standard for morality, particularly when it pertains to worth, intent, and action. Her entire story revolves around her trying to make meaning of her existence. She doesn't see herself as valuable and depends on others to assess her worth and place in the world. But that all finally changes when she realizes that she's the only one who could
break the cycle.
So let's talk our Dear Jinx / Powder's story. Well, not quite. The thing with Jinx is that the outside world doesn't actually matter to her. Events don't shape or change the course of her life. People do. So if we just sit down and go through the events of Arcane through Jinx's eyes, we won't actually come to understand her character. Similar to her counterpart in the Pilty trio, Powder was born with a struggle, her mental health. And contrary to the belief that Powder's mental health is due to the trauma of her sister leaving her or her parents being killed, the opening scene of the series is viewed through Powder's lens, and we clearly see the artistic representation of Powder's hallucination over the somber backdrop, and her seeing Vander at a much older age than he actually was in the moment of time when he saves them. Now, I have no experience in the health field, so I'm not going to speculate or diagnose Powder's mental illness, just highlight the symptoms that we see in the show. Similar to Victor, her condition shapes her personality and path in life. Because her struggles were not seen by many others, with the only ones being conscious of it being Silco and later in season 2 Savika, many people ignored or mischaracterized the reasons why she did things the way that she did, which led to Jinx having the opposite need for people. Everyone with eyes could see Victor's struggle. So external to his personal struggles with his deteriorating body, he was overlooked by others in a sympathetic way, which was a prime drive for Victor to be self-sufficient and dependent, building his self-esteem and hubris by using his talents to come up with solutions, which ultimately made it impossible for others to undermine his capabilities. Powder's condition, on the other hand, was very much less visible, so people expected from her what they'd expect from everyone else. So when she was unable to deliver, she was blamed, bullied, and shamed. Not only did this manifest in an inferiority complex, but Powder herself didn't understand why she was the way that she was, which meant that she couldn't trust herself or her intuition like Victor did. Instead, she needed someone who cared to understand and value her to guide her through life. At the start, that was Vi. But when Vi abandons her, Silco becomes the replacement. And another thing that we see with Jinx, which highlights how many things she needs to juggle alone in her own mind, is how she externalizes her thoughts, feelings, and emotions through symbolism. A lot of the symbolism in Arcane comes from the crafty mind of Jinx, a starting point for your journey to understanding your inner thoughts or unconscious biases is by somehow externalizing them. There are many conscious and unconscious ways that we can do this, whether that be jotting them down, journaling, or using an expressive art form. Dreaming, talking to ourselves or some imaginary person just to get those thoughts out, dressing or presenting ourselves in a particular way, or connecting on a deeper level with another creative expression, like getting into a song, a story, or even just a character. All these things are just testimonies of what's happening in our inner minds. And Jinx, she does that with every important or impactful thing to her. Simple things like painting her nails blue and pink to symbolize powder and the Vi created Jinx. The fake tattoos of the blue smoke symbolizing the guilt and lasting impact of the explosion that killed her family, as well as the hope of the flare that Vi had given her. The dolls of the people that she holds dear so that she doesn't forget them. All the way to the weapons that she makes or repurposes, arenas that she sets up, and her suicide attempts. Every thought out action that she does for herself, she adds symbolism to. Because she wants to tell her story. She wants someone to listen. A story that she's experiencing rather than the events that actually take place. Like all art, Jinx's works tell her perspective, and given that she struggles with trusting herself and therefore values nothing that she currently is, she opts to externalize everything. Get her memories and feelings out, have them there before they are gone forever or re-triggered in a different manifestation. And that leaves Jinx as this hollow vessel of pure intellect and chaos, controlled by whoever can basically sway her. And for that reason, to truly understand Jinx's story, we need to talk about Jinx's interactions with other characters and how they've impacted Jinx's decisions and direction in life. Despite Vander being very close to Vi and Powder's family, to the extent that Vi trusts him, Powder didn't have the same warm feelings towards Vander. Towering over her, Powder was afraid of him. Or perhaps she didn't even know or recognize him. I mean, she was very young. So long as her remaining family member was going to go and live with him, she had no other choice. Years later, and well, Powder has become part of Vander's family, with her sister Vi, Milo, and Clagger. But this doesn't mean that she was on good terms with them. Though Powder knew what Vander was doing for her was good, she was still somewhat afraid of him and didn't totally feel loved by him. Vi had wanted Vander in their life. Vi valued Vander and needed him, not Powder. She just followed suit. And then Vi taking on the blame and encouraging her to hide information from him didn't exactly help clear any of her perceptions of Vander. It was Vander as Warwick in season 2 who did so. As for Milo and Clagger, they were older than Powder, around Vi's age, so she couldn't relate to them at the same level as Vi did, which meant, on a whole, she was always left behind. Now, Vi's a good sister. She could see that Powder was feeling excluded, and so tries to include her when she can. She felt solely responsible for Powder and took it upon herself to basically raise her sister. Consequently, Powder felt believed in, and so did everything to impress Vi. Nothing mattered to Powder except Vi's approval. Like, to the extent that she couldn't even see her own merits unless Vi told her that she was talented. And that's because Powder had no self-esteem. Combining the fact that she struggles to trust her own perception of the world with the way she's isolated from the rest of her family members due to age, she feels useless. Add to that,
she's a problem.
You see, of Vander's older three, Milo himself felt like the weakest link. So picking on Powder was his way of making himself feel good and his contributions worthwhile. But when he picks on Powder, Vi gives him an earful, which adds to him feeling inferior, that could only be remedied by taking it out on Powder. And so the negative cycle continues. Now here, I do want to point out that Vander is an incredibly encouraging father, protective, but recognizes and cheers on every single one of his children's strengths. We don't exactly see him do this with Powder as per se, but we haven't seen anything in his character to tell us that he would have singled her out otherwise. In fact, we see the opposite in season 2. He does recognize Powder independently of her sister, which appears to be something that Jinx herself was unaware of. She kinda thought that Vander had taken her in as a package deal. But this realization becomes the basis of their re-established relationship, with Jinx finally calling him Dad at the end of the series. But because she didn't recognize that beforehand, only Vi's positive appraisal makes her feel worthwhile. She solely depended on Vi to the extent that she developed a crazy fear of abandonment. And yes, this fear can be attributed to her parents' death. So when Vi finally snaps, Powder has no idea what to do. She didn't know how to deal with herself.
Hello, little girl.
Now, like Vander, Silco had just walked into a situation where he finds an orphan all alone. But unlike Vander, Silco didn't feel sympathy directly. The shock of Powder throwing herself onto him, combined with her renouncing her sister, reminded Silco of his complex feelings for Vander and what he'd done to him. And it's these feelings that drive Silco to take Powder in. Sympathy derived from what was presumed to be a shared experience, but really isn't. In fact, what Powder and Silco went through were the complete opposites: fire and water. That's what Jinx and Silco are, and why they are so explosive together.
Story of opposites.
The Jinx and Silco parallel is deep, but it's also predicated on Silco's false equivalency of their betrayals. When Vander tried to drown Silco post the bridge scene, we learn from Vander's letter that he did this out of rage for Felicia's death, Vi and Powder's mom, a death that he blames Silco for, given that he had thrown the Molotov cocktail, which started the Enforcers off. But Silco was like Powder or Milo. In a sense, he felt like he was the weakest link. In their trio or group of 4, Silco couldn't offer much more than his brains. So in accordance to panels with the makers as well as shared DMs, when Vander, Silco, Felicia, Connell, and Benzo with a bunch of other Zornites went on the Bridge of Progress for a peaceful protest, and then Benzo gets arrested for being all up in the Enforcers' faces, Silco does the only thing he could to save him. Mix up a cocktail Molotov and use it. And so we get the Day of Ash. Look, I get Vander's emotions, especially after seeing Vi break down the way that she does. But I also get Silco's. It's just so messy. And it's literally Vi and Powder in episode 3. Both Silco and Powder wanted to help and save someone they love. But it goes wrong and gets other people that they love killed, which leads to the person they love the most to lose their cool and attack them. But here comes the one difference that makes Silco and Powder's experiences completely different. Silco was alone. He needed to make sense of the situation by himself, make meaning of his feelings by himself, which led him to his current philosophy.
Real power comes to those who will do anything to achieve it.
The weakness that Silco killed in that moment is his way of saying he let himself hate Vander, blame Vander for the pain. But at the same time, Silco knew that if Vander hadn't tried to kill him then, he wouldn't have had the drive to fight for the lanes after Felicia's loss, to make Shimmer, and later his empire. Without that moment, he too would have made a deal with Grayson, like Vander and Benzo. The very thing that he doesn't respect in either of them. So for that,
I thank you.
Powder didn't have any of that. As she sat at the edge of the consequences of her Molotov cocktail, someone comes to affirm her feelings. She didn't need to reflect on her actions or process what happened. Someone had just told her,
It's okay. We'll show them. We will show them all.
Without processing, that day continues to haunt her, set her on edge. Silco realizes this.
Fear haunts us all, child.
Perhaps too late. But that is when he passes his philosophy to her, recreating that sweet moment of clarity and rebirth for him. The moment he drowned old Silco, and Jinx letting Powder fall down a well, so that she could let go of her haunting past. Let go of this weakness he calls Powder, so that she could stay the perfect, cunning, and careless Jinx. The employee, daughter, and weapon that he had raised. By guiding her every choice, giving her an irresponsible amount of power, whilst dusting away the consequences of her actions. Jinx could do no wrong, but Powder could. At least, that was Silco's POV until he almost loses her. Now, let's look at things from Powder's side. The floodgate of emotions she felt by her sister leaving her behind and her not appreciating her handiwork leaves her absolutely disheveled. She doesn't even notice that Silco had come to, well, kill her. So while Silco was doing his thing of manipulating people with his words first before using physical force, Powder registers his question as genuine concern, and so she hugs him. Comfort was what she needed in that particular moment, and she perceived his approach as an invitation for compassion, rather than understanding that this was manipulation. After Silco digests his surprise to the misinterpretation, his sympathy reciprocates Powder's hug, affirming to Powder his compassion and feeling of comfort. Sometime early in the 7-year time skip, Silco and Powder believe Vi to be dead, and so Powder transfers all of her need of self-worth to be derived from Silco. Silco, on the other hand, sees Powder's creativity and encourages it, giving her the purpose of using
all that explosive potential of yours for good.
Relatively speaking. We have to remember that this
You heard him. They won't stop. We need to fight back. And if you won't, I will.
was the final position that she saw Vi take. To her, Silco and Vi's dreams for the lanes were identical. He could help her make her sister proud of her from heaven. But he was hard to impress. Or at least that's how it appeared to Powder. We have to remember this is the first time that Powder was alone and unpampered. She had just passed her toddler milestones when her parents died. So of course she was still being given everything by her parents till then. And then when Vi takes on the mantle of being her replacement mom, well, she cuddles Powder, cause that's how she's seen her parents treat her. It's really unfair for us to expect this 10-ish-year-old to parent their younger sibling, let alone make sure that she hits all her milestones. Then add to that Powder's mental struggle, and well, there's no wonder that she was attached to her sister. And now she wants all of that from Silco, needs it. But to Silco, she's an intelligent, creative teen ready to take her steps towards independence. He's molding her skills into a career, this perfect persona with the reclaimed name Jinx. These complete mismatches in needs and expectations develop this rather unconventional father-daughter bond between them. They both love each other, do things for one another, but there is a toxic undertone to it all. Every time Jinx makes a mistake, Silco shoulders the responsibility off to someone else to fix, aka Savika. This one makes Jinx feel like he doesn't believe in her, thus going out of everyone's frickin' way to prove otherwise. And 2, it fuels the feud between the two gals. Silco is making the same mistake with Jinx as Vi did with Powder. They give her huge responsibility so that she doesn't feel left out or worthless, but if she messes up, and the show only shows us when she messes up, they reallocate the responsibility and burden, preventing her evolution and growth as a person by needing to make decisions on how to fix things, which only adds to her need to fix stuff because she needs to prove them both wrong. There's another effect to all of this. Because she doesn't suffer any consequences, she has no understanding of the gravity of her actions. And given the fact that the jobs that Silco gives her are pretty hardcore, and she doesn't understand that they are hardcore, when she tries to prove herself to him, she's gotta top all that.
Also, I brought this dynamite.
Do you have any idea what you've done?
Everyone in the lanes knows that Silco loves Jinx like a daughter, and they perceive his exclusive treatment and leniency as nepotism. But Jinx, on the other hand, didn't see it in the same light. She felt the pressure to perform and do his bidding. She needed, but hated his control over her. Again, a big proponent of this is she has come to believe that she can't trust herself or her decisions, something that has some truth to it. At the same time, she needed to be seen as worthy of keeping, worthy of love, and Silco gives her that. Sometimes. The sometime condition is predicated on Jinx's perception of both Silco's words and actions. Given his insecurity of being weaker in nature, Silco plays the tough guy, showing little restraint in his manipulation to maintain authority. Though he doesn't use this persona with Jinx, opting to wear makeup to look less threatening and softening his tone most of the time, and allowing her to get physically close, we can tell that Jinx has seen Silco's tough guy act numerous times. She basically copies his tactics. Like her father, when faced with a dilemma, Jinx uses her brains to survey the situation and manipulate it to her advantage, targeting the weakest link, planning her position, using her words to incite the emotions she needs her opponents to feel to one-up them, using far-ranged forces first, and then, if need be, gets physical. Most of the time, it doesn't get there, because if it does, they both know that they're gambling with their lives, which we see throughout the show, Jinx cares way less about than Silco. But going back to Jinx's perception of Silco, she struggles to identify between his manipulative and honest state, which ultimately puts her in a weaker position most of the time. She tries to remedy this by getting external intel or sussing things out for herself, but then her mind gets in the way. On the other hand, her unpredictability due to her mental health is what makes her stronger than Silco at other times. This in turn makes their relationship feel transactional, because keeping the other in their life comes with a cost. To Jinx, it's her worth, and to Silco, it's his safety. However, regardless of that, they both choose to make those compromises because no one else could give them that love that they crave. Vander and Vi's replacement in their life. Jinx becomes a criminal for Silco, and Silco compromises the entire city for Jinx. And even though they trust each other, they ultimately succumb to their relationship's transactional nature at the end of season 1. Jinx loses powder, becoming the ultimate criminal for Silco, and Silco loses his life, giving Jinx the ultimate confirmation of her worth to him. After Silco's death, both Jinx and the nature of her relationship with him changes. First, there's the grief of losing him, and consequently her purpose. Denial, pain, anger, depression, bargaining, and because she lost both a loved one and the thing giving her the drive to be, she goes through the stages of grief at least twice. Over time, Jinx accepts Silco's death, and he exits the halls of scratchy hallucinations that haunt her to a full manifestation guiding her. And really, she couldn't have reached that acceptance if it weren't for two people coming into her life and re-establishing a need for her existence. And by extension, allowing her to explore what she really wanted from life. Sevika and Isha. Now, it's difficult for us to talk about Jinx's relationship with these two without looking at her relationship with Vi first. Because as you recall from the parallelism video, Sevika is Vi's opposite. And this extends beyond personalities and loyalties. Sevika and Jinx had a sibling rivalry between them, fueled by Silco's nepotism for Jinx, asking Sevika to deal with Jinx's messes. Basically, Silco, Sevika, and Jinx are the toxic Undercity equivalent of Cassandra, Jace, and Caitlyn. And Jinx, above all, felt this the most, being jealous, vengeful, yet still caring enough about Sevika to help her out. On the other hand, Isha reminds Jinx of Vi and Powder, the part of her that she killed and tried to kill. But now, she was the older sibling, and this opens her eyes to a perspective she'd never really considered in her relationship with her sister, Vi's side of the story.
Are you real?
We know that Powder was the only thing keeping Vi fighting the 7 years that she was in Stillwater, whilst Jinx believed her to be dead, and in a sense wanted Silco to be Vi for her, the parent that she'd lost. Unlike Clagger, Milo, and to an extent Vander, whom she talks to prove her worth to them, Little Bunny and the Flare, which are the mementos of Vi, are hidden in a box underneath Milo's mannequin. Unlike the others, Jinx held onto Vi, this hope that she's still there, not as a ghost haunting her, but a guide.
You never left. Your voice. Pushing me. Picking me up. You're the reason I'm still alive.
So she couldn't memorialize Vi, like she'd done with the others, or AU Powder had done. Part of Powder denies Vi's death. So everything which may remind her of Vi, bringing Powder back to her past and the pain of loss, she quickly stops or gets rid of, explaining why she's hidden the bunny and the flare for so long. In saying that though, another part of Jinx feels betrayed by Vi. She was the only person who understood her worth and encouraged her potential, until on that night, Vi showed Jinx that she believed Milo, saying the painful words,
Because you're a Jinx!
Words etched in her very being. The thing she wants to prove wrong to her sister. Being Jinx was going to be the best thing for the Undercity. The best thing Vi ever made in her short life. Vi lived through Jinx. Hence why pink represents Jinx, whilst blue represents Powder. But everything changed when she was told that Vi may still be alive. Her first assumption was that Civica was making it up. Payback for the mess she'd made in their previous encounter, and fueling the rivalry between them. Her second assumption is that Silco had lied to her about Vi's status, to manipulate her. And the third, that it is true. Jinx covers all her bases. Hence the horrific torture scenes, and also becoming vulnerable and allowing the pain to come as she sets the flare off. For better or for worse, depending on your perspective, Civica was telling the truth, albeit exaggerated, which ultimately leads to the breakdown of the father-daughter dynamic that she had with Silco. In Jinx's mind, she only needed one of them, and given that she feels pressured and betrayed by Silco, picking Vi was the sound choice. So she tells Vi the truth. That was until...
Civica wasn't lying?
Kinda. Civica had told Jinx that Vi had replaced her with Kate, a crucial point that Vi had no clue about. So when Vi doesn't deny this false fact, Jinx realizes she couldn't trust Vi blindly like she used to. They had changed, which is true, and something that we'll talk about in Vi's video. But it's not for the reason that Jinx believed. Jinx was still processing this, giving her sister the benefit of the doubt when the firelights enter the scene and snatch Vi away from her, leaving her to ruminate in her thoughts and hallucinations, do her own research and inquiry to see if Silco's words were true. And look, Jinx tries really hard to stay on top of things, waiting for solid evidence to make her judgment about Kate and Vi. Her biggest fear was abandonment, and so to know that Vi may abandon her, the proof that Jinx needed to see was Vi prioritizing another over her, leaving her behind for someone else, regardless of how dire the situation is. It's a selfish idea, yes, bred from her belief that she only requires a sole provider, but really we can't really blame Jinx for her selfishness either. Being selfish is a survival instinct. It exists for a reason and is something that we are inherently born with. Selflessness, on the other hand, is learnt. And we'll focus more on selfishness and selflessness in our heroes and villains analysis. But with regards to Jinx now, the environment that she grew up in didn't lend itself for her to learn selflessness. And the two main teachers and role models that she's had in her life saw teaching Powder selflessness as a detriment to her because of how malleable she is. Their protective nature and selfish need for her saw it better that Powder or Jinx value her life for the slightest promotion of self-preservation.
And here comes the punchline.
So Jinx's abandonment issues are re-triggered when Vi goes back for Caitlyn. Silco had been right in her current point of view, so she
Have to complete the weapon.
for him. to get in his good graces again. But she also wanted to express the pain of betrayal that she felt. So she recreates the first scene of the show, the Day of Ash. And we just love Jinx's symbolically customized showdowns. The next scene we see Jinx conscious is genius. The physical pain Jinx is going through due to the truckload of shimmer being injected into her veins is juxtaposed with the emotional pain of being replaced in Vi's life with Caitlyn. And for context, for the amount of pain that Jinx is feeling in this moment, look at both Silco and Vi's reaction to the tiddlywink of shimmer that they get. Poor girl. But then translate that to the emotional pain, which is being presented as comparable, and we understand the betrayal that Jinx is feeling. Add to that the fight between life and death itself. We'll elaborate on this further when we talk about her relationship with Echo, but Jinx wanted to die. She didn't want the pain anymore. But here she was on the table being brought back to life because another person wanted her alive.
I was supposed to die.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
And now she's up. Her first course of action was to gain a sense of worth again. And she does this in two ways, completing the weapon and catching the devil. Now, I'm sure that Jinx justified her kidnapping of Caitlyn as some elaborate way to curry favor with Silco, but ultimately she did it for herself, eliminating the competition for her sister's heart. And as she was going to tell Silco the great news,
Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?
which prompts Jinx to rethink her decision of leaving Vi behind. She needs to make a choice as to how to live her life. Bring Powder back from the well and go back to her old life with Vi, or continue her life of crime as Silco's version of the OG Rebels prodigy. Both sides had a problem, a contradicting interest to herself. Kate and the treaty. So time for a new showdown. Mad Hatter's Tea Party at Silco's old warehouse. And I think this is a good place to stop. Keeps us all on our toes because we're getting to the good bits now. I hope that still means you'll stick around for the full analysis when it does come out, and it'll be easy peasy. You just have to skip to where the tea party starts. So I hope to see you in a couple of weeks' time with the full analysis. Be brave, be happy, and be kind, and we'll catch you all later.